Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. We have the pleasure of having two of our team members on our webinar. Andrea Riviezzo and Andrew Tuskey will be presenting on It's Not Me, It's You, Signs It Is Time to Upgrade Your ERP System. And just as a reminder, we are recording this webinar and we will post it to our on-demand webinar library for you to review again or share with anyone. And you can find our library under our resources tab on our website at innovia.com. We do encourage you to ask questions during the presentation, so please feel free to type them into the questions box and we will get them answered at the end of our session. Now I will turn it over to Andrew to kick off our presentation.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We are very excited to talk about a subject that is near and dear to my heart, which is determining really when it's time to find a new ERP. It's never an easy decision, and as the title states, it's really not you, it's your ERP. So really excited to dig in, share a little bit about what we've seen from our current customers and customers that are or companies that are currently looking at making the switch. But first, we'll kick off with some introductions.
Maybe. All right, there we go. It moved. All right. I'm Andrea Riviezzo. I'm an application consultant that specializes in finance and accounting. There's my email. Very hard name, so good luck. I am a CPA. I have a lot of accounting experience. I've been an ERP manager as well at a CPG company, and I'm definitely a NAV Business Central lover, large in the community, which we'll talk about later too. And I like to brag about this. I am the second place at my gym for bench, deadlifts, and squats in my age category at my local gym, right? So I used to be third for bench, in case you've heard any of my other webinars. I'm now second, so, round of applause for me. And with that, I'll bring it over to Andrew.
All right, I'm currently last in my gym, for what it's worth. So Andrew Tuskey, I am a customer engagement specialist, which is a really fancy way of saying that I help customers discern when it's time to make the switch. So really excited to share a little bit about that with you. Like Andrea said, my email also right there for you to send me an email if you have questions after this webinar. I've been working in the SaaS space for the last 7+ years. Worked at a company called Salesforce that some of you may be familiar with, and another company called ActiveCampaign just before this. So very familiar with making the difficult decision to move to new systems, and really just excited to dig into today's content. So why even consider making the change? Why evaluate your current ERP? Well, like any good relationship, it's always good to take stock of what's going well and what's going poorly. A lot of times in businesses, you're pretty busy, and it's difficult to actually even make the time to figure out whether or not you need to find something that works better for you. And so really what we want to cover today is some of the signs that we've seen from our customers and what they have told us, and what we've been able to help them with as they've made the transition from their last ERP to their new one.
All right, now some drum roll, right? So these are going to be the red flags that we identified. And I will say that your current partner, they might be good, right? This ERP or accounting software, which, right, if you're on QuickBooks or Peachtree, they might be good. They're a low cost, good solution. My dad uses them for his business. He runs a small business. So these are not to say that these are bad systems or they've been bad to you. This is just, like looking forward. Are they still the right fit for you and where you are now or where you're going? All right, let's get into them. All right, some first red flags. You're doing a lot of manual entry. You're doing everything in Excel. For the most part, everything's Excel based, and then you're bringing it over. I hear from a lot of customers that even some of the things that you would think would just be a part of an accounting system is in Excel. So I've seen people doing invoices in Excel, purchase orders in Excel, tracking inventory in Excel, and that's not even getting into warehouse or manufacturing yet. That is just like the core of your business is all in Excel. I love Excel. I mean, I do. I'm an Excel jockey as well, but I don't think you should be doing accounting in Excel.
Yes, good for numbers, bad for wanting to spend your time doing literally anything else. So along those modes.
Oh, I got too crazy. Do you want me to go on, or are we done? Are you going to point two?
Oh yeah. So
I was
mean,
I got very heavy. It's all that benching, folks. I went just.
That's right. You're right. So kind of in that same vein, really one of the biggest things we hear are that customers are doing the same thing over and over and over again, and they think, well, there has to be an easier way to do it. Well, guess what? There probably is. Whether it is doing AP documentation, whether it's just to dip our toe into warehousing, whether it's doing shipping, picking, packing, all of those things. It is remarkable how much you can do within Excel and how much you should not do within Excel. And a lot of that means you're doing a lot of repetitive tasks. And that really trickles down to your staff too, because you probably want them to be focused on doing other things like finding ways to make the business more profitable. So with that said, I mean, there's ways to really make the system a little bit better in that regard. But there are some other issues too that kind of go along with that.
Yep. So I'll also say a story about repetitive tasks. One time I was talking with Microsoft and they went into somebody's business and they say that, like, I forget her name. I'll just say Carol. Carol moves files from A to B all day. That is her job. She moves files from A to B. And they said, it would probably just take like an hour. We could just automate that. And then they looked at him and said, well, then what will Carol do all day? So sometimes people like those repetitive tasks, but what Andrew's pointing out is maybe there's a better use for Carol. Maybe it shouldn't be moving files from A to B. It probably wasn't doing the company that much if you're considering the headcount cost for something that you could automate in 1 hour. So if you're thinking, well, what about the people? The people could be just used differently if they're doing repetitive manual tasks currently.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and I saw that a lot too, coming from the CRM space, which typically ties in really closely to the ERP. I cannot tell you how many people in sales hate to do CRM things. So if you tell them that they have to do CRM things within the ERP, it just gets even worse because you probably want them out selling. that is their primary goal. So that's really what we're hoping to avoid.
And speaking of CRM things, most of these small platforms, they don't integrate with anything. So if you are using a CRM, like a Salesforce or the Microsoft one, they're not going to integrate into the system. So you have these disjointed systems, or possibly you've picked up other systems so you can run your warehouse or your manufacturing, and none of them are talking to your accounting system. So you're doing that's where this Excel work also comes in. You're having to bring it all together into your accounting so you can get a picture of your accurate financials instead of just having the systems all talk to each other.
Yes, that is exactly right. And what that ends up meaning for you is that you have a lot of different pieces of data residing in a lot of different places. And one of the critical issues that comes out of that is just getting good data, right? I mean, I think the term business intelligence is something that's thrown around pretty much all the time. And what's hilarious is it's not really all that intelligent if it's not actually speaking to each other. So, if you have, for instance, your accounting data sitting in QuickBooks, and maybe you have your inventory system sitting in Excel. Well, guess what? They're probably not going to be talking to each other live, and someone's going to have to bring that data in, and there's usually going to be some amount of mistakes because there's more human error involved, and that's really what we want to try and eliminate and try to identify as we look for a new system.
Yeah, and we see this a lot too, and with manufacturing, where it's in somebody's head. So it's called a BOM, a bomb. So I'm not calling in any threats right now. So it's that bill of material. You often see in smaller companies that don't have an ERP, that are just using accounting software, that this is in somebody's head. If that person leaves or wins the lotto, you're done. They've taken that institutional knowledge with them versus it being recorded into the system. So that is one of the bigger things, especially if you are running manufacturing, that somebody either has all these things in Excel, maybe correct, maybe not correct, who's auditing it, and then on top of that, it might just be in their heads that they're doing it correctly.
Yeah, but you probably don't want to guess about that. That's probably throwing that out there. So.
All right, and then oftentimes we see there's a lot of lack of permissions in these systems too. So if you're trying to be SOX compliant, AP versus AR versus fixed assets and inventory, most of these systems don't have very good permission sets. It's kind of a all or none license. I've seen some with like QuickBooks where you might be able to cut off like HR and payroll versus general users. But for the most part, I have not seen any of these systems have robust permissions or allowed to build permissions.
Yes, yeah, and that is a very, very good point, especially for someone like myself, who primarily works on the account management side. I probably don't need access to all of those things, frankly. And if I do have access to all of those things, there's a pretty good chance that there might be some mistakes that are made. For instance, we've had customers where they've actually had someone change the cost of a unit and not tell anybody. And that screwed up quite a bit in terms of commission, in terms of what they're charging the end customer. All of those things tend to trickle down. And so what that means to you is that you've probably actually outgrown the system, that you do need to find something else and say, hey, wait a minute, this is it. This is probably the thing that is going to push us over the edge. But it's a really difficult decision to make. We understand that anytime that you move from one ERP to the next, it is usually at least a couple months to make that move, just to be very, very transparent. And frankly, it's one of those things where you have to have your ducks in a row. And so having a good partner is going to help you do that. But really just making sure you know yourself that you have also outgrown it is a pretty key component to moving on from where you're at.
I was like, he stole the next point. I wanted to say it, that it is not you, it's them.
That's right.
Exactly it. And there's other signs besides these that you've outgrown your system as well. Like if you are looking at a hockey stick for your growth and your revenue outcomes, it's easier to get good practices, policies in this ERP system in place now versus later. If you're sitting at 10 million now and you're expected to grow to 100 million in the next 2 years, you're going to need the big boy system. And you probably want to get the big boy system in before that expected growth. Now, I always say that there is kind of like, the systems are kind of designed for certain revenue points, right? So if you're $2 billion or more, BC is probably not actually a great system for you. But if you're under, like, I think it's like 20 million, unless you have that expected growth, it's probably also maybe a little too big, but we'll talk a little bit more about that soon. But there could be just, like, as I said, you could just outgrow your system in just different ways besides the ones we listed. I've even had people complain about things like workflows. There's no approval processes. People could just post entries to any date that they felt like doing it, and they've posted it into audited back periods, and they just didn't, that's just too much for them. So there is definitely only you, I think, can really determine when you've outgrown your system. And I'm going to guess even if you're on this call, you're probably worried that you might have outgrown your system. Andrew, did I just steal your thunder, just steamroll right over you?
No, I'm just speechless about how perfect it was because I because that's
Ah,
exactly right. Well, and especially and what's interesting too is like we do have some customers too that have multiple accounting systems, which poses really its own significant challenge, right? Because maybe you have a few different facilities, maybe you acquire a new company, and you have to help them determine whether it's time for them to move on to the next system. I mean, there's a whole host of things to look out for. But again, a good partner, just to plug Innovia like ourselves, that's what we do. That's why they have folks like myself who are non-billable, because we understand it's such a major undertaking to even get to that point. But we want to help you answer those questions.
definitely. All right. So we can talk about some relationship green flags. And yes, these are about BC's relationship green flags. And then I always like my poorly drawn lines. These are my favorite comics. So I like to make it interesting. We're going to start to make our lives better, not worse.
That's
All
right.
right. Oh, sorry. Did I cut you? Do you want to see it?
Oh
Read
no,
it?
I was gonna say I'm a fan too. So.
I was like, did I flip too fast? Can people see the comic? I put effort into it. All right, let's talk about those green flags. All right. Am I starting? You start. Oh,
That's
you
all.
starting. Okay.
Yeah.
Point
So
one.
number one, so excel with purpose. First of all, always love a good pun because it's true. We want to actually use Excel to make life easier. So here's the dirty truth about ERPs. Whether you are a mom and pop shop or you are Coca-Cola, you're pretty much always going to use Excel in some form or fashion. And there are ways to make that easier, right? So it's the same thing. I know I mentioned AP documentation earlier. We help customers all the time with AP automation, but guess what? There's still going to be some element of human interaction there. But that doesn't mean we can't make things as easy as possible, right? So with something like BC in particular, you're able to export the data directly from BC, but you can also import that data back into Business Central and make it work for you. And we also work with some pretty great companies like Jet Reports, who they do a lot of their work within Excel. So again, there's a lot of purpose that you can put into Excel, even beyond what you're doing now. But we want to make sure that it's actually meaningful and not just something that you have to do day in and day out.
Yep. So, like things like account reconciliations, if you're doing balance sheet reconciliations or your income and COGS reconciliations, monthly or quarterly, whatever your schedule is, most of those are still going to be in Excel. There is a lot of subledgers, so there is a lot of help. So, like there's subledgers for cash, there is subledgers for your fixed assets, for your inventory. As long as things are set up correctly in the system, you can. Um, get away with not using Excel for some of those, but you're still going to have to use them. There is another software out there that I like that integrates to BC that can help with your month-end close and those reconciliations. So you are kind of getting out of Excel, but that is just, oh, and there's AP and AR subledgers. I almost forgot about that, but there is a lot of subledgers. There's a lot of help that you can do, but there is also going to be this element that you are going to have to still use Excel, and that's always sad. All right, next up, maybe. All right, you got to make your system work for you. So there's a lot we can do as like an AC, as we're setting you up to make sure that this kind of like in your image, it's things that apply to you. If you're an airline company, you're gonna have something specific to you that's different from the oil company or that power tools company, right? So your company is unique. There's gonna be things that are unique to you. If the system just can't do it out of the box, there's customizations, there's different things that we can do in ISVs to make sure that this system is going to grow with you and not just be some kind of stale archaic thing built 20 years ago, and I guess we'll just still use it because it's here. So it is a pretty cool system, and that's one of my favorite parts, is that you can make this system really in the image that you need it to operate your business.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, we have some customers that really just use it to, you know, do accounting and really just cut checks, you know. And what's so great, and I think what's so unique about Business Central in particular, is the question we get all the time as well: what industries you work with? And I think the answer is actually kind of the inverse of that, which is, what industry do we not work with, right? We have customers that make baseball bats. We have some customers that make, you know, things with injection molding. We have all sorts of different customers, and with Business Central in particular, as the company, as your company hopefully grows and you acquire new businesses and you expand uh, into different things that you do, you want to make sure that the system mimics that ability. So again, when you bring those new companies in, the nice thing too is you can have multi-entities within Business Central, and it's a relatively quick process to set up. So that way, when you consolidate, it makes life a lot easier for you. Which actually brings us to our next point, which is having one source of truth. So again, kind of going back to the point we had made in the red flags with the disparate data. You're going to have more than one system. There are some companies out there that shall remain nameless that think you can do everything all on one platform, which is patently false. You're always going to have more than one piece of technology, but the key is making sure that you have one place where all of that technology syncs up, and that's really where the ERP comes into play. You want to make sure whether you are using Salesforce or whether you're using, you know, some sort of Insight works for shipping. You want to make sure all of that data is collected and amassed in some place where you can look at it, where you can do reporting based on it, where you can really just see everything that you need to see, both from a bird's eye view, but also being able to get into the details themselves.
Yep. So that's what I was going to say too. Often what I hear for some systems, I'm not saying all, but some of my customers that have come off some of these smaller systems say they can't actually see most of their transactions or the details behind them. It's just kind of like they almost entered in and it becomes like a black box. You can't really see it after that, which BC, you can track anything. I feel like sometimes when somebody's like, I don't know how this happened, I'm like on a podcast for a murder. I'm in there, right? I'm in the details. I can see everything. I'm like, it was committed at 9:33 a.m. on Monday, right, by Kim. And it's kind of fun because you can really go deep. You can dig deep. You can really see everything in the system. You can see attachments. Like if obviously if somebody attached them, but you can see who did what, when, and hopefully why. Sometimes why is still questionable, but at least you could start someplace and actually have all the detail that you need, and hopefully be able to close a little bit faster by actually having visibility.
Yeah, and also for anybody who is using an EDI, this is like an ideal reason to make the move, because if you have, you know, whatever, pick a, you know, transaction type, you know, that's coming in, you want to be able to read that document quickly, have it in your system, and be able to have that all in one spot. I cannot tell you how many times I've worked with companies where they're literally in, you know, a million different places, and that's really again, pretty not ideal overall. So
All right, I'll do that one.
So setting up permissions, again, just a critical step to any business. As you become more complex, as folks become more just nuanced in what their roles are, you know, we work with a lot of companies that have quote unquote an IT person, which really means they do everything, whether it is, you know, network security, whether it's managing their tech stack. But as again, the company grows, you're going to need to set up those permissions to make sure the right people are seeing the right things. So with SOX compliance, also with GAAP compliance, you want to make sure you have some real quality control built into your ERP, and that setup is absolutely critical in making sure that again, I as an account manager don't need access to anything. Probably don't want to give me access to anything, everything, and that's the goal. Is I see what I need to see, and you see what you need to see. But being able to have that set up is absolutely essential.
I will warn, when we set up people, we set up everybody so you could literally do anything. When people are first in the systems, as like normally permissions are kind of personal. So it what works for you might not work for somebody else, right? So you might have somebody that does AP and fixed assets and they make journal entries, but maybe they can't cut checks, while somebody else, they can only do AP, but they can cut checks and they can't set up vendors. So everybody has different takes on what it means to be a role within accounting, mostly based on just headcount or hours in the day, stuff like that. So I will warn, we don't set these up. However, there is this really cool tool where you can record people going through their motions, and then it would build a permission sets for you. So I love that. NAV did not offer that, which BC was NAV at one point. NAV didn't have that, so it's one of my favorite features of BC. It makes permissions a lot easier, but we typically don't run that for people. We have you run that for yourselves, but I just like to caveat that way if you're like, we're going to get this great AP permission set. And it's like, well, your AP probably looks different than the next guy's AP. So we got to be careful there. All right, which now brings me up to my bonus point of a green flag. Business Central NAV has a great communities. So there is a group out there called like Dynamics User Group. They have a live conference every year and I believe a virtual one too. And the conferences are a lot of fun, I'm not gonna lie. My favorite is actually a tax conference. Every year I love going to Avalara's tax conference. It's the best. I would pay to go myself, but the community is great and there's a lot of free resources online. Even Innovia offers free resources as well. So even like webinars like this one today, why this one's a little bit more high level, we also offer detailed ones. Like I had one a few weeks ago about how to set up EFT in your system. So you might not even have to talk to me. You could just do it yourself for free. And so there's a lot of other free things out there, a lot of blogs, a lot of webinars, a lot of messaging boards. I believe Dynamics User Groups has a messaging board. So if you have a question, you can ask it. And I'm not saying that I don't want you to ask me a question, but I mean, if you're one of those people that like to help yourselves and you want to find out the answer and you don't want to pay somebody to find it out for you, like I was, and that's how I actually fell into this because I like to research my own things. And that's how I got good at the system when I was an accountant. There is ample opportunity for you to learn, expand your skills, and meet people and have conversations. I remember back when I wasn't great at fixed assets, I would call my friend Rob and I'd say, Rob, help me out here. I have a fixed asset problem. And he would get on the phone with me and help me out with that. So it is an amazing community. I love the conferences and I just love that people are so willing and able to share what they know to help others.
Yes, I'm just going to say yes to all of that. I just believe
Also, there is local chapters too. So I run the Denver chapter. Not going to brag, but I am. But so there is these local chapters. They do meet on occasion. With COVID, kind of put a hamper on how often people actually meet in person. But they are starting up again, which is kind of nice. So there might actually be one close to you of people actually meeting up. And there is still what I call the rogue chapter leaders. And we meet up once a month for a free online for everybody that would like to come and join us. And you can get a bunch of information. And if there's time, Q&A to ask whatever questions you have. Maybe somebody on the phone can help you out. And of course, there's us. We're here too. You can always ask me a question. I'll help you out too. But I guess more of the free version of that question and answer session.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, sorry, Angie, were you going to say something?
I was just going to add that I did put some links for everyone if they wanted to take a look more in depth at those links for Dynamics Con, the user group. There's tons of information on their website, so feel free to browse those links that I shared with you in the chat.
Awesome. Thanks, Angie. All right. And now, just like any relationship, there's going to be some bads. All right. So I just wanted to full disclosure. I didn't want to paint it all roses and sunshines that BC is going to save your life. It's not. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, it can, but I mean, well, let's talk about the bads real quick first. I'm not gonna lie, it's gonna be more expensive. If you're using QuickBooks right now, your annual cost is probably in the upwards of about $250. I don't think you're going to be in this system for $250 annually. So there is going to be monthly dues. There's implementation costs, which portions of that can be written off the CapEx, just in case. Fun fact, accounting facts. And it's just probably overall just going to be more costly if you do any kind of integrations, add-ons, other ISVs. It is going to add up. So that's why I always say there's kind of like that price point of when do you want to be in it. And that's why I said I think about a $20 million company. Less if you were growing like a hockey stick and you just know, hey, today I'm at 10, but I'm going to be at 100 million so quickly that you want to set up these good processes now. But otherwise, I'd say I would hold. Don't go in at 10 million because it's probably just going to be kind of a cost burden unless you are losing money because of like the warehouse and the manufacturing plants all not being talking together, right? So if you're losing money, that makes more sense to spend some money to stop the bleed. But otherwise, I would say just be warned, you're going to spend more with this system.
Yes, and to that point, what you put in is really what you get out, right? So we have some customers. Quick plug for our friends at Carroll Parts and Suberizer, who they've done an incredible job of setting up a lot of Business Central on their own, but they've also invested the time and energy into learning the platform. But to Andrea's point, yeah, it's a lot of making sure that you understand that there's going to be more money to be spent on it, right? But the goal is to have a much higher ROI. And with that said, I mean, really with the platform in general, you know, you're going to have greater power. You're going to have higher ROI, but it also means you're going to have more responsibility, right? I probably use the analogy more than I should, which is that ERPs are a lot like houses, which means that you're going to have to keep it clean, right? Any good system is only as good as the data that's in it. And so making sure you have good, clean data and making sure everybody understands their roles within it is absolutely critical. So it's something that it's always nice to be live once you do go live, but just know that it's something you want to continuously keep an eye on and continuously build off of, because that's what makes a great ERP great.
Definitely. And with that too, I hear sometimes from people, well, shouldn't it just do this? Shouldn't it do that? And I will say, like, it's a really robust system. I feel like a lot of people could just naturally come in here and be able to use this system without very much customizations, without ISVs. The system can do quite a lot on its own, but it's not going to do the accounting for you. And it also doesn't know what your specific requirements are, right? So Microsoft didn't go out to every business and say, hey, what do you do? What do you like to see in the systems? Let me build that for you and make this customized for your industry or for your company. It's a very generic profile where a lot of people could easily fit into it, but I would say that it just out of the box, I would not expect it to just be the perfect fit for anyone there. It's a great fit, but is it going to be 100 fit out of the box? No.
Yeah.
All right. And with that, there's learning curves. That's going to be with anything, right? Nobody is naturally just good at it. You can find people like this is not like a small use system. There are people out there that have worked with it. So, you know, they're not going to have that problem, but at the same time, if you're going to keep the staff that you have, which hopefully that is your intention, but they're going to have to learn it. And with learning curves always comes some frustration. Some people are going to love it, some people aren't. I mean, I loved it as a controller. I thought it was the best thing ever. I stick my whole career on it now, so I loved it so much. I switched professions, but that doesn't mean everyone's going to love it that much.
That's exactly right. That's, again, it's about better, better, best, right? Like you want to continually make it better, knowing full well that, there's always going to be more work to do, and there is going to be a learning curve. So it's a very, very salient point. So the other thing too is, I mean, you want to make sure you incentivize your staff to really to dig in and own the system, right? So, we make the point that your employees are going to act their wage, right? They have their day jobs. We know that when we come in and we say, hey, this ERP that we're going to install, it's gonna probably run you about 1,000 hours from our staff, just as an example. But what we also say is it's probably going to be 1,000 hours from your staff too, because they're also going to need to test it. They're going to have to tell us, how they do what they do. So when we're building it, it's built around them. But you also want them to be able to own it and feel like it's something that, they have, they're responsible for being part of this big project, but also too, it's something cool at the end of the day that they can own and say, hey, I did that, and it's also good for the company overall. But again, make sure you have a partner that's willing to help you do that training and making sure that you build out that incentive, because they are very, very critical in making sure that your employees like it just as much as you do.
Definitely. And I will say, if you have employees that say, that's not my job, you're probably already off to a bad start. So really acceptance of the system, ensuring that people have the time. It's not going to work with the stick. They're going to need carrots, or they're going to need to be invested in it. They're going to want to feel involved. But anyone that says, that's not my job, I can already tell you that person's not going to be very invested in it. If they think this is replacing their job, they're not going to be invested in it. And that's true of any ERP system you go to. So we're not just talking if you could decide BC or not. If you change it to any system, you need people to be invested in it and want to achieve it. If they're working like 50, 60-hour weeks, and now you're saying on top of this, I need you to give all this paperwork to somebody else so they can set up this system, and then I need you to train, and I need you to test this, it's not going to go well. So unless they feel like there's some kind of sight for them at the end, or they're clear on what their goals, objectives, and why this is a benefit for them. So maybe they won't be working 50 to 60-hour weeks, and they do have a light at the end of the tunnel. It's just a little pain now for some reward later. So I do like to always warn on that. I've actually done an entire webinar on this whole podcast about how not to fail your Business Central implementation. And realistically, it's things that you can control on your side. It's about change management, which there is a class on change management that's 3 days. And so I'm just going to say my 1-hour podcast is probably not going to cover all of the bases of change management. But if you are considering changing your ERP to anything or installing any new system, I do recommend, as a manager, as high-level management, that you consider taking how to do change management if you have not. It will probably save you a world of pain in your process, because otherwise, I mean, every project that drags out has almost always been from like people in the organization not wanting to achieve. So if I say, hey, we're going to need the customer list, and it takes you 6 weeks to get that to me, there's nothing I can really do to expedite that. So you guys, we're a team. We're going to have to do this together. So there's a lot of things as an internal, as a manager, as the CEO, there's things that you can do to ensure that you're successful. And so that's why I did that podcast. And then apparently I want to take quick, credit for Andrew's, because he did this QuickBooks one, and then I put my name on it. I was like, that's what he gets for having a name so close to mine.
So close. I mean,
It's so close. It's like
a letter off.
that one letter. I'm so used to typing my name.
Well, and to be fair too, I mean, we work really closely as a team here, right? Like Andrea and I are, hundreds of miles apart, and that's how we work here at Innovia. Is you know, we're based here in North America, and the goal is to make sure that we just get you exactly what you need. And so when we offer these resources, whether they're podcasts, whether it's assessment on QuickBooks, and even the one that about Great Plains, the goal is to get you in front of the right people, because spoiler alert, I probably am not going to have all the answers, and that's usually why we have folks like Andrea on staff who who can help answer those questions.
Definitely. And if you're like, what is this creepy pigeon photo? If you're paying attention, you're seeing a creepy pigeon photo right now. I don't really know what this is. My friend Bobby. And he posted this on his LinkedIn, and I was like, fair game, Bobby, I'm taking this. It's a random pigeon photo, so there you guys go. I like to keep it real.
That's Bobby listening to the podcast. He has some
it's only Bobby,
really
and he's on right now, and he's like, why is this? Did she use my pigeon photos? Yes, I did. I love him. I don't know. I kind of want to borrow this pigeon helmet. He lives down the street from me. So if you see a new series of photos of me in a pigeon hat, that's why.
Now we know.
Now we know.
Right?
I was like, because it's just super random, and that is what I like. All right. I think that's all. Did you have any other points before we get to questions?
No. I'm curious to hear if anybody has questions that we can help answer. Also happy to dive into anything else that we went over that maybe you guys want to spend a little bit more time in.
Don't all rush at once, guys. We only have so much time.
So true.
So
Otherwise, I will say there's one of the questions that we do occasionally get from current nav users. So if you are currently on Navision, this webinar still pertains to you as well, because Microsoft is making some fairly significant changes to one of their promotions, which is called the Bridge to Cloud promotion. And so we have a team again here that's really dedicated to moving folks from Navision to Business Central. Same with Great Plains. Microsoft is really focused on really two ERPs. It's Business Central and it's Finance and Operations. Those are the two. And the one we work with, of course, is Business Central. But there are some questions there that you may want to ask yourself related to nav, but these are all still fair points that we've made that you can still apply to the business, even if you're on a Microsoft ERP.
Definitely. Well, mostly if you're like on like nav 2009.
Oh yeah.
Because most people open it and be like, oh no, not your dev environment. And they'll be like, no, this isn't dev. And I'm like, this isn't your dev environment. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, you know what?
Don't even know how to navigate this.
That's a great point too, because at some point they're going to end support for the software, right? So, and it's the same with Great Plains. Like Great Plains, they have made abundantly clear that they want folks to move to BC or F&O. So there's not a red flag there if you're on GP. You just need to move. Like that's just just move, and we're happy to help you understand what that process looks like.
Oh, and one question I get typically from people is about why not just go to F&O? F&O is what was formerly AX, and it's a big boy. I will say if you are sitting in your millions and you're not over 2 billion, F&O is a beast of burden. That is a massive system. It is meant for 2 billion plus global organizations. It is complicated and things are twice as expensive. So the same software package, like a reporting package in BC, maybe it's like 15,000, will definitely cost you 30,000 in AX F&O, right? And you're like, well, what's the difference? Maybe I'm getting more for that 30. You're not. You're not. It's the same thing. It's just more expensive. And you say, well, how can that be? And it's like, well, people are willing to pay that when they're on the F&O. If you're a $2 billion company, 30,000 for something is probably not that expensive, right? You're probably like, sure. Or you don't have anything to cost compare because you're not on the lower systems. You don't know that, it was cheaper there. So if the consumer is willing to pay it, the companies are going to be willing to charge it. So I just wanted to mention that. If you're like, why don't I just go all the way to the top? Let's just get F&O. You probably don't need it.
Yeah, that's like going from. I mean, it's really like a mansion. I mean, like it's a big, big, big system, and it is right for some companies, but I would definitely do your homework before making that sort of commitment.
Definitely. Yep. I've gotten asked that a lot. Like, why would I do BC over F&O? And I'm like, well, are you 2 billion plus? If not, no.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
would not even consider that. I would just look away. No, that is out of your price range there.
oh, easily. Yeah, that's 2 billion is a good mark too. I mean, Business Central, I would say anything above 2 million. I think 20 million is probably the right mark, but I would say anything 2 million above, you can make the switch. But yeah, with F&O, if you're at 2 billion or 3, or it might be time to start having some conversations. So
Right. Yep. I think just the transaction volume alone is just too large for BC once you get into that 2 billion plus. So,
yeah.
and if you're like, I'm 300 million, will it handle my transactions? Yes. Yes.
So now you know.
Now you know. I
So
was like, and if you're like, wow, Andrea, how do you love it so much? I'm like, I just do. It's
well, and again, if anybody here has any questions, I know we've kind of covered a lot of ground, but there's probably still more questions that are out there. You're always welcome to give us a shout. We put our emails at the top of the hour just so you can ask us.
We're
But
also on
hopefully,
LinkedIn, or at least
yeah,
I'm on LinkedIn.
I am too.
Yes,
Not
I
on
accept
TikTok.
new LinkedIn requests all the time.
Yeah, so reach us there. But otherwise, yeah, please, if you have questions, we're always happy to answer them. But I think otherwise, Angie, if you want to share a few more resources, and then we'll get wrapped up.
All right, thank you both. I appreciate it. I just confirmed there are no other questions. And like Andrew said, if you have additional questions, please feel free to reach out and we will get those addressed.
Oh, she said the
Actually, we
link
do
to the
have
Dynamics
something.
user group returns an error message.
Uh-oh, I got that directly off their website too. Let me get a new link out to you. I will send it to you via email. It should work. I apologize.
Here,
That's
I'll try. Let me
strange.
see if I can throw one in the chat really quick.
If you can do that for me, Andrea, that would be great. And
Yeah.
I'll finish wrapping up.
Oh,
Okay?
how do I do the chat? No.
Pop out.
I was like, I don't know. But it's just you can also Google it. It's just dynamicsusergroup.com.
Yep.
And it's a great site.
You.
I mean, you can see there's conferences, there's forums, there's meetups, YouTubes, all kinds of stuff. So highly, highly recommend. All right. With that, Angie.
Thank you. So I just want to thank everyone for attending today. And if you're watching on demand, thank you for taking the time out to join us. And to our presenters, Andrew and Andrea, thank you for the presentation today. You covered a lot of ground, like you said, and there's probably more to dive deeper into. And don't forget to check out our website for more of our upcoming events, and that's innovia.com/events. You can also check out our training workshop page. We have a lot to, a variety of workshops for you to choose from, and that's innovia.com/workshops. So check one that's right for you and your team and get registered for that. They do have a cost associated to them, but it's a very small fee, and it's good for the entire company. So you can have one person attending, or you can have multiple people attending from your organization. And also check out our Innovia Conversation podcast. Our hosts have a library of podcast episodes for you to listen to, and you can check that out at innovia.com/podcast. Browse our selection and subscribe.
Sorry, Angie. I thought you were done. I was like, oh, catch her on the pause. The best one's mine, 63.
Thank you. Browse the selection and subscribe so you'll get notified when those new episodes air. And we do have some exciting news about our conferences in 2023. So visit our conference page at innovia.com/conferences to register for our conference, as well as the Dynamics User Group Conference. They have actually 2 of them for 2023. The virtual one coming up in March, and then the live one that we are back to back with in May in Scottsdale, Arizona. So check that link out and view the information that is in there for both events and get registered for those. All right, well, we thank you again for joining us. Thank you to our presenters, and we look forward to seeing you soon on another Innovia webinar. Take care, everyone.